Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So that's the warning we would like to lay down. Elected officials, those holding offices of trust and profit under the United States, who conspire with financial oligarchs, with bankers, hedge fund speculators, and so forth, who conspire to bring about the bankruptcy of the United States and default in time of war, because there is a war. It could be liquidated, but right now there's a war. We're still laboring under all of those declarations of states of emergency left over from 9/11. If under those circumstances you say, let's go ahead full throttle and connive with Wall Street and the City of London to sink the dollar, to drive the United States into bankruptcy and default for the first time, visiting untold horrors on the working families of this country, that is impeachable. And after impeachment, we get into the question, isn't that giving aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war? And they say, well, no, I wasn't trying to help any foreign enemies. Well, the fact is you did it, so that's the objective result of the action. So beware those who would wreck this government and bankrupt it. This will not pass without tremendous scrutiny. And, of course, once the speculators have been identified, it would be easy to bring them up in the dock of public opinion, and their political careers will not do too well. Now, let's move on. We've got the group of 20 coming in Korea, right? Barkey is now winging his way to Asia. He's on his way to India, to Indonesia, to South Korea and Japan. We're going to have the G20, and this is looking grim. Now, let's just set the stage. As of this week, we've had a hysterical pop in the stock market. We've had four days of big gains, and it's all around QE2, quantitative easing 2. It's announced it's billed as $600 billion of hot money that will be injected into the U.S. financial system by helicopter Ben Bernanke and his gang at the Federal Reserve. This is pure hot money. This is all going to go directly into the hot money speculative markets, the flesh pots of Asia, I guess we could say. It's not going to stay here. It won't create any jobs. It is the failed method that they've done already. Hot money doesn't work, and it sinks your currency. The question now is that beginning the possibility of hyperinflation once again? And I would say, yes, it certainly bears watching. We've had the Dow up, for example, in the last 24 hours, the Dow up about 2%, world stock markets up about 2%. We have gold at an all-time record now, $1,389, headed towards $1,400. We've got silver up 7% in one day. We've got the dollar at a 5-month low, at least compared to the euro, the yen, and the pound. It's 81 yen. When the dollar goes below 80 yen, that's another benchmark. It's now 142 U.S. dollars to buy a euro. So this is the result of hot money. Oil, $88 a barrel. All kinds of commodities shooting up, up, up. Well, is that the beginning of hyperinflation? Is that incipient hyperinflation? Is the QE2 going to turn into the Titanic? The dollar is down 15% internationally since June. In other words, since the failed attempt to wreck the euro broke down. And this then focuses everything on the G20 in Seoul, South Korea. Here's the idea. The U.S. will be totally isolated. The U.S. is in the process of monetizing debt for the purpose of stimulating hot money speculation. There's not a nickel in here for real economic stimulation. And, of course, when you give rich people money, contrary to myth, rich people who have cash don't invest in plant and equipment and create new jobs or small businesses. They take it to Brazil or South Korea or someplace else, or they just go to Wall Street and go to Goldman Sachs and buy derivatives. That's what they do with the money. That's why this stupid Republican argument, Tea Party argument, does not hold water. So monetizing the debt, we'll talk about this issue. This is all done in the wrong way, because this is monetizing the debt for the purpose of propping up Wall Street, not providing liquidity for actual physical production and infrastructure, which would be the way to go. But now as the U.S. comes in, the U.S. plans for the G20 in South Korea was always to bash China, to try to set up a front of people bashing China about their peg and force them to go to a free market, uncontrolled currency, let down their defenses, right? The U.S. was going to attack China for the peg. They were going to attack Germany for having an austerity program. The austerity program is foolish, but the U.S. wants the Germans essentially to debase their currency and to essentially do what Japan did back in the 1990s, to go from a boom to an absolute bust, right? The lost decade was rooted in U.S. pressure on Japan to be the locomotive. So they want China and Germany to become the locomotives of propping up the U.S. This is not going to happen. In particular, the Chinese are not going to be the subject of a universal execration. Rather, it's the U.S. Just in the past 24 hours, we have the finance minister Manteiga of Brazil criticizing the U.S. Fed and Bernanke, saying that this is the wrong way to go. And in particular, he gets nasty. Manteiga says throwing money out of a helicopter is not a good practice. That's a definite jab at Helicopter Ben Bernanke, and that, of course, is exactly what Helicopter Ben is doing. But just remember, when Helicopter Ben made the helicopter speech, he says throwing money onto people's lawns. The problem is that the lawns involved are those of Jamie Dimon, Lloyd Blankfein, Moynihan of the Bank of America, Pandit the Bandit of Citibank, and so on down the line. So a hot reception. South Korea, the host country, also not happy with the U.S. because as the U.S. dollar goes down, China goes with it, and that puts tremendous pressure on Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Brazil. Anybody competing with the Chinese export machine, which is the biggest in the world, is going to be screaming at this. There's also the question of austerity, right? Obama says, no, you guys should not have austerity because we want you to prop us up. You should mainly be concerned with propping us up. Now, in an abstract way, the austerity is wrong, but at the same time, what Obama wants is also something quite destructive. So he's going to clash with who on that? Well, with the Germans, the European Union, and with the British, right? The British usually supportive of the U.S., but now with Cameron and Clegg, they have this huge austerity program, including 25% cut in the military establishment and billions of pounds gouged out of the hide of the average Briton. They will not be supporting Obama. So the U.S. is isolated. The conflict with China goes on. They're at loggerheads with Germany, and they're also in conflict with Brazil, Japan, and South Korea. The answer, though, is capital controls, exchange controls, at least this much. Hey, Seoul, South Korea, hey, Brazil, you better go to a full regime of traditional capital controls and exchange controls. You've got to essentially dump the Washington consensus and contribute something to the emerging Beijing consensus, which is that hot money should not rule the world, that the value of currency should not be decided by Soros. It should be decided not by the market, but by the government involved, the only expression of popular will that we can have. By the way, if you believe that the free market is built into the U.S. Constitution, you better look in Article 1, Section 8 of that Constitution, among the powers of Congress, to coin money and to regulate the value thereof. To regulate the value thereof means that the value of the currency is determined by the government, therefore not by the market. So it's a direct contradiction to the lunatic free market mantra, the Austrian litany that we hear, that the founding fathers were all strong free market men. No, they were not. It says, look there, Article 1, Section 8, one of the provisions, one of the enumerated powers that are so much praised, to regulate the value thereof. What does that mean? It means not the market, but the government has the full power to determine the value of the dollar. So let's get busy doing that. Throw out this Austrian myth. Get back to the American system. Federal Reserve is also letting the U.S. banks increase their dividends for the first time in a couple of years since the panic began. Now, the mood in the U.S. financier parasitical elite, of course, is quite triumphalistic. The headline in the Wall Street Journal today, Friday, let's see, what do we have? It's the 5th of November, meaning they say the Dow is now back to the pre-crisis, the pre-Lehman bankruptcy level. Well, meaning it's back to the level of August of 2008, which was already after quite a bit of a slide over the previous 12 months. But you get the idea. Anyway, look for the U.S. to be isolated and bashed in South Korea at the G20. And we'll be back in a minute.